Hi guys, and welcome to another NerdSociety.com video. I'm your host, Ivan Krolo, aka the Game Raging Psycho, and today I will be giving you guys my review of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This is the latest film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe line, the third film in their second phase to be more specific, and it is basically sort of an epilogue to the Avengers that has been hyped up as the lead-in to the next Avengers sequel, Age of Ultron, which means that this film had pretty big expectations to fill, and after the pretty terrible Iron Man 3 and the horribly mediocre Thor: The Dark World, the stakes were pretty high for Captain America: The Winter Soldier to pick up the slack for its fellow Phase 2 films and salvage Phase 2, just in general. But before I give you my non-spoiler and spoiler review of the film, I just want to tell you guys, if you need a site where all your nerd needs can be fulfilled, you should check out nerdsociety.com. We got tons of reviews for comic books, video games, TV shows. We got interviews with comic book creators like Todd McFarlane with professional cosplay players. All that nerd-related stuff you can find at nerdsociety.com down in the description below. Now, as I said like a couple seconds ago, I will be doing a non-spoiler review, a short one, for you people who haven't seen the film, which for most of you listening to this, that's probably going to be a vast majority of you. And then I'm going to be doing a longer non-spoiler, a spoiler review, sorry, which will be going in depth into the film. All right, so the first things first, the non-spoiler review. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is probably the best Marvel Studios film they've made, maybe ever. Now, as a guy who loves Iron Man 1, that is a bold claim, but even for a guy like me who, like I said, I love Iron Man 1, I think it's just one of the best movies I've ever seen in my life. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's not a very cohesive movie, especially because the film really didn't even have a script. I'm talking about Iron Man 1, not Winter Soldier. Iron Man 1 barely had a script, and it really relied on a pretty rough outline and its actors' charisma, and to basically pull the whole movie through. And the lack of script is pretty painfully obvious, which does bog the film down. And if they were able to get a solid script, it could have been, one of the best Marvel movies ever, in my opinion, at least the best solo one. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a film. It's the Marvel movie I've been waiting for. It takes a lot of the complaints that have been placed on the Marvel Cinematic Universe as a whole, and they basically fix them in a lot of ways that make sense. It is also a much smarter movie than the traditional Marvel Studios fare. It has a lot of genuine heart. It has a lot of interesting drama, a lot of themes and ideas to explore. And I can just pretty much tell you guys that I have really nothing bad to say about the film, except a few nitpicks here and there and a couple of missed opportunities. On the whole, the film is just the complete package. The fighting choreography is some of the best I've ever seen in my life. The way Captain America, Winter Soldier, Black Widow, pretty much every character fights in this film is breathtaking, and it is surprisingly brutal. Some of the things they do here just made my jaw hit the floor. All of the acting is superb. Nick Fury is probably the standout because Sam Jackson has some of the best lines of dialogue in the whole film, and every time he's on screen, he just steals the show. You can tell he's having loads and loads of fun playing Nick Fury. And as for Black Widow and Captain America, the two returning characters along with Nick Fury, they really settle into their roles this time around. You can really see that Chris Evans finally gets a feel for Captain America in a way he kind of was struggling to in the Avengers and in First Avenger, the first Captain America movie. And same with Black Widow, Scarlet Johansson. She got the general idea of Black Widow, but I wasn't entirely sold on her performance in Iron Man 2 and even in the Avengers. But this is the film where a lot of the focus is actually on her, and I think it really works out because it really gets to show you how Scarlett Johansson has advanced as an actress in this particular role. So overall, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is just a film you gotta see. It's pretty much one of the most well-rounded Marvel Cinematic Universe movie I've seen. It has the action, the heart, the drama, but none of it is compromised for the sake of stupid slapstick jokes that completely undermine the drama, which was a big, big, big problem I had with Iron Man 3 and Thor the Dark World. Here, the comedic timing is perfect. Whenever a line is meant to be funny, it is laugh out loud hysterical. And all in all, it's just a movie you gotta see. So, yeah. For my short and non-spoiler review, I'm telling you guys, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, you gotta go see it. I think it is I think it sets the bar very high for its competitors like X-Men, Spider-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, and the like. And those movies are gonna have to work very, very hard to top this bad boy. So now that this non-spoiler review is over with, I want to give you guys a few seconds to get out of here, so you don't spoil the movie for yourself. If you've already seen the movie and you just want to hear what I had to say about it more in depth, or you don't care about spoilers, feel free to stay. All right, so now that you've all left, those of you who don't want to be spoiled, I'm just going to continue on with the more in-depth analysis. Now, the film's plot begins, I want to say, at least a few months to a year after the events of the Avengers. So, in the Avengers, Captain America became an even greater hero to the American people than ever before, and since he kind of didn't have anything else to do with his life, he decided to join Nick Fury's S.H.I.E.L.D. agency as one of its top operatives. And the film basically begins, in Washington, D.C., where we see Falcon, played by McKenzie. I think it's McKenzie. I'm not sure. I can't believe I forgot his name. But anyway, Falcon is Sam Wilson, the Falcon. He's, taking a few jogs around Washington, D.C. He's a former Army vet. He served, 2 tours in Iraq, which kind of messed him up, as war usually does to soldiers. And he's basically, taking a nice little jog when Captain America pretty much runs past him, several times, and he just makes Sam Wilson look like a chump. And it's a great display of humor, and it really shows you just how powerful Captain America is in comparison to a different human, because he is the ultimate man. He is everything. He is the pinnacle of humanity. He is the strongest a human will ever be, the fastest, the smartest. Everything is encapsulated into this one guy who could probably kick the ass of like an entire army by himself, but he's a humble and genuinely nice guy from Brooklyn. And the film really does a great job of showing you that as it progresses. So Scarlett Johansson shows up, more witty banter that's actually pretty hilarious ensues, and they are sent onto the mission that pretty much sets in motion the rest of the film's plot. The mission is basically that Batroc the Leaper has taken several high priority Shield personnel hostage. He's threatening to kill them, and plus he took a valuable a Shield ship, and it's up to Black Widow, Captain America, Crossbones, or Mark Rumlow, and the strike team to basically go in there and save the hostages and to figure out what the hell Batroc the Leaper is even doing there. And this scene and this whole segment in the beginning, it serves to give you a showcase of the multiple layers of the film itself. Like I said, the beginning jog is to show you just how powerful Captain America is, which gets reiterated several times in the taking the ship segment, where you just see Cap throw that fucking awesome shield around like a boss. He just takes out dudes left and right. They can't even touch him. And the only guy who can really go toe to toe with Cap in this entire movie is Winter Soldier, because he's an enhanced human himself. All these other guys were just flesh and blood dudes like you and me, except with probably decades of army training and the necessary requirement to kill. They just get their asses completely handed in by Cap in spectacular fashion. And the ship segment, serves to show you the more dramatic parts of the film, as well as more of the action to showcase Cap's powers more, but it also serves as an introduction to the big theme of the film, which is trust. Now, the life of a spy this is no secret. It is typically a life of lying, backstabbing, and manipulation on various different scales. It can be as simple as something like a white little lie that can get you an advantage into a situation, or it could be a big lie that can affect the lives of thousands and thousands of people. And the theme of trust is a big one here, because Steve Rogers does not like working for Nick Fury, and he doesn't like the way the modern world is. because he doesn't like because what happens on the ship segment is that he goes to save the hostages and he manages to take out Batroc the Leaper. And in pursuit of Batroc the Leaper, he finds Black Widow trying to take high value shield intel that was on the ship. And the two of them are nearly killed by Batroc the Leaper when the dude throws a grenade at them, but they manage to apprehend him nonetheless. Steve Rogers almost immediately goes to confront Nick Fury, and we really get to see their conflicting ideologies, which play a big part of the film. Because Cap, in comparison to a lot of the other characters in this film, minus Sam Wilson, Captain America believes that freedom cannot be forced. You cannot force people to be obedient. You cannot force them and to live in this kind of subjugated form of quasi fear and then just call this freedom or security or whatever such bullshit you can. And when you really take into account what he's saying here, it makes a lot of sense, because this is a guy who was living in the time of World War II, where a large number of people in Europe and around the world, they were being forced to live in freedom, quote unquote, by people like the Nazis, who were basically forcing their will on everyone else. And this is something that Steve doesn't like, because he was always the little kid. He was always the guy who had to be forced to do stuff he didn't want to do. He was always the guy being picked on. And this is one of the things that really drives his desire to not let things like fear or other people's wills dominate other people's wills. And it's one of the big things about his whole ideology. He truly believes that true freedom, true security, and all that stuff can only be achieved if people do it willingly. You cannot force these things onto people. And Nick Fury is kind of on the flip side of that. Nick Fury is kind of like the modern guy. He says that trusting people is not a good idea. It's liable to get you killed, especially in this business where manipulation, backstabbing, and lying is pretty much the name of the game. And he pretty much says that the world is not like it used to be, Steve. These days you cannot just wait for a terrorist cell to go in and bomb another building, killing thousands and thousands of people just because you want to follow the same old rule of, I thought the punishment came after the crime, which is a line that Steve tells Nick Fury. And Nick Fury basically tells him we cannot allow that to happen. We need a system that allows us to take out threats before they can even happen. But like on some levels, Nick Fury is right. But on other levels, you got to question, where do you draw the line? Because of one of the big themes of the film, and it's basically kind of like the MacGuffin of this film. There is nothing really related to the Infinity Gems in this film. This film is pretty much separate from everything else, from all the other stuff going on in space and the other Avengers and all that other cosmic stuff. And it's pretty down to earth as much as you can make a Captain America movie be down to earth. And basically the big MacGuffin of this film is that they are creating this small fleet of experimental helicarriers that allow them to pretty much pinpoint the location of any possible threat to not just America or S.H.I.E.L.D, but to the safety and security of the entire planet. And these things can, go on working for infinity. They never have to land. They're never going to run out of ammo. And they can pretty much go around patrolling the world and taking out threats before they can even happen. And in a lot of ways, Nick Fury does have some valid arguments. He says that in these days, you cannot just wait for stuff to happen. You gotta take preemptive action, make sure the tragedy is stopped before it can really even happen. And there is truth to that. But then Steve Rogers, he says that if you basically show the entire world that you have this fleet of ships patrolling them non-stop, and they have no chance in hell of ever stopping if they go awry, you can basically hold the entire planet hostage. Because if this thing can find anybody on the face of the planet, no one of the 7 billion people on Earth is safe. Because if anyone who could ever potentially show you a threat can just be killed by a press of a button. And that way you're not really giving people freedom or security. You're basically using fear and intimidation to force them to live in this kind of world where they should never do anything wrong. And that goes against Steve Rogers' philosophy, where he says that people should be allowed to achieve peace, security, and harmony and all that stuff on their own. You cannot force it. And this is one of the big ideological struggles in the film. This is something I really didn't even think when I was watching it, but now that I'm kind of recording it and telling it to you guys, it actually just shows you the depth of this film. Like almost none of the other Marvel Cinema Studios films have any kind of themes or ideas that really kind of enrich the experience. They're basically popcorn flicks. You just watch it, have a couple of laughs, you enjoy shit being blown up, and then when it's over, you barely remember the fucking thing. But this is one of those films that gets better the more you think about it, the more you think about the character motivations and the big ideas presented forth. Um, but then again, Captain America's whole ideology is kind of thrown, for a curveball when Armin Zola's AI shows up about midway through the film, and he basically tells him the first thing Hydra learned when we infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. during its early days, the first thing we learned from the failure of the Third Reich was that you cannot force people into into following something. You cannot force them. You cannot dominate their wills because they are going to rebel. You need to scare them enough where they will willfully abandon their own freedom, their own morals, everything they stand for, so you can basically dominate them completely. And this is another fascinating view as to just how kind of messed up the modern world is. We like to think that we live in an era of peace. But in reality, we've basically just replaced, big open warfare with basically secret wars waged by agencies and all these different proxy battles and all this. It's basically we live in a world where secret wars are happening probably on a daily basis. Spies against spies and stuff. The world isn't just a big open battlefield like it used to be. It's in the shadows these days, and more often than not, the people doing these secret wars, they don't have the people's best interest at heart. They have their own agenda, and they're pretty much willing to do whatever the hell they want to achieve it. And then when you really and then when Armin Zola basically tells Captain America, when they recruited us into the early S.H.I.E.L.D., we have basically been manipulating S.H.I.E.L.D. and the very course of human history itself for decades now through not through Captain America, through Bucky Barnes, aka the Winter Soldier. Because one of the things of Brubaker's original story arc was that Bucky was found by Nazi scientists, specifically Red Skull, and he was basically brainwashed, given a bionic arm, physical enhancements and all that stuff, and he was used as the Winter Soldier for decades. He basically went around assassinating anyone who could ever ruin their predicted future of the world, because, they knew they had to push the world into this kind of direction, and if anyone showed up with higher power who could possibly divert the world from where they needed it to go, they would basically send the Winter Soldier to assassinate them. And again, it kind of plays into this whole big conspiracy theory thing, because we all know about the Illuminati, the real world ones where we basically think we're all being manipulated, we're all being herded like cattle, but we don't even see it. And this film again plays with that idea, and it uses it to great effect. Like when you just see the scope of their plan, that they created this whole plan that is spanned generations, decades, lifetimes to achieve. And in this film, it almost comes to fruition, but it is thankfully stopped thanks to the timely intervention of Captain America, Nick Fury, and their allies. And it's almost kind of Star Wars-y when you think about it, because in the Star Wars expanded universe, 1,000 years before the prequel trilogy, the Sith were on the verge of winning the war, but they were defeated. So a scant few of them plotted, from the shadows, and they spent 1,000 years manipulating and corrupting the Republic from within. And the culmination of that corruption and their plan was basically seen in Episode 3 of Star Wars, of the prequel trilogy. And you can draw several interesting parallels with that. It's kind of funny when you think about it that Captain America, the Winter Soldier, a Disney-owned film, is kind of using a similar plot line used by Star Wars, which is another now Disney-held property. I just thought it was kind of interesting, and it actually made me like the movie even more. Well, now that I'm done spouting my philosophical pseudo bullshit, and I've most likely lost all of you at this point, but I'm just going to keep going on. Now going on to the action. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, the action in this movie was so fucking awesome. Holy shit. every time an action scene happened in this film, I had a big shitty grin on my face. I could not believe some of the stunts these guys pull off. Like, like, yeah, it's easy to do action scenes, I guess, for characters like Superman and Thor and Hulk because it's basically them wrecking shit. But when you have characters on the level of Batman or previously Captain America, not so much after this film, it's kind of hard to do action scenes with them because their power set isn't so amped up. So you gotta really focus on the stunts. You gotta really show that these guys are agile, fast, and powerful. And this film perfectly shows it. In fact, Anthony Russo, the Russo brothers, who basically directed this film, they said that they actually played the Captain America Super Soldier video game, and they actually had the fighting choreographers and stuntmen see the moves from the game, and they used the moves from the game as part of the official fighting choreography. And if you play the game, like I did, you're going to see a lot of the similarities there, and it's actually pretty damn cool to see how well a fighting system, which was basically ripped off from Arkham City, works well on the big screen. It is essentially, the very system. Cap goes into one guy, knocks him down. Other guy comes in from behind him. He takes him out, and then another guy, and then another guy. And then there's the elevator bit where there's like 10 dudes wailing on him, and Captain America, like a fucking boss, he just takes them all out no problem. Like they barely even get a scratch on it. Rumlow does get a few decent hits in, but Cap just completely decimates them. And you really can't tell that this guy is superhuman. The stuff he does in this film, no ordinary human could possibly survive it. And the way he uses his shield is spectacular. Seeing the shield just bounce off from walls, tear through engines, stop missiles or whatever is amazing. Like, I cannot describe in words the fighting choreography in this movie. It's just something you gotta see to believe. And then, when you see Captain America and Winter Soldier go at it, and these guys are basically, pretty much even, except Winter Soldier obviously has an advantage because he has a bionic arm. And realistically, you can make a human being as powerful as you can, but at the end of the day, a machine is a machine. It's always going to have the advantage, and they do actually show that. But Cap manages to compensate it with his own shield, and it's just really fan-fucking-tastic stuff. Like Zack Snyder, I hope Zack Snyder sees this movie and he says, this is how Batman needs to fight in Batman vs. Superman. And I pray to God Almighty Batman fights like this in the next movie. This movie easily has some of the best action set pieces, not just in any Marvel movie, but in comic book movies in general. This is the first movie to really nail how a reasonably normal dude would fight in a comic book brought onto the big screen. And in my non-spoiler review, I mentioned the acting. The acting is just fucking superb all throughout. Everyone gives it their A game. Like I said in my non-spoiler review, it is obvious that these guys have gotten a handle of their characters. Black Widow is able to show a full range of emotion, from distressed to kind of snarky to flirty, and she feels like a fully three-dimensional character just from her interaction and from her facial expressions. And then there's the way she's treated by the script. But the point I'm making is that all the actors feel like they've gotten comfortable in their role. They finally have a handle on how to do their respective roles. And this film really showed me why Captain America is such a respected dude. He has a commanding presence on the big screen. Like when he's barking orders in this movie, you can see why people would genuinely be inspired by him to do good. And then there's Anthony Mackie. He plays Sam Wilson, the Falcon, and he immediately gets his role from the start. He's kind of like it's almost like a buddy cop movie, except in reverse, I guess, where Cap's the main guy, and then Anthony Mackie is his partner cop or whatever, and it's almost a buddy cop movie in a couple of scenes. You can really tell these guys have great chemistry with each other. You can tell that these guys really enjoy playing their respective roles, and their dialogue and banter, it feels very natural. It feels like how two real soldiers who have been through hell and back would actually, talk about that kind of stuff. And I thought he had some of the funniest lines in the whole movie. But the dude who steals the show is Nick Fury. Funny enough, the guy who's probably not really that much in the film itself, the dude steals the show in terms of just pure humor. His lines of dialogue and his delivery are fucking hysterical. In fact, this movie has the best comedic timing I've seen in a film in a long time. And I think that getting directors who are known for doing comedy shows and stuff was actually a very inspired choice. Because comedy is all about timing. When you time a joke just right, it can be fantastic. But if you don't time a joke well, it's going to fall flat on its face. And even if you do get a chuckle out of the audience, you run the risk of undermining the drama or the tension in the film that you're trying to build up and such. This severely fucked up Iron Man 3 among many, many other things, and it really hurt Thor the Dark World too. Here, every joke is hysterical because it is timed perfectly. It never undermines the drama, it never undermines the tension, and it adds a lot of levity in scenes that could have been really, really kind of messed up. And there are a couple of scenes in this movie where I was just like, holy shit, they actually did that in a Disney movie. Um, but yeah, like I said, the comedy is just fantastic. I think that getting guys who actually understand comedy on a deeper level is actually a very inspired choice. And I actually would like them to do this more in the future. I don't want them to do this with every a director they pick, but I do think that they should at least get comedians as consultants because, like I said, it's all about timing, and who better understands comedic timing? Well, then fucking comedians. What else? What else did I want to say? Well, I've been pretty much praising this film for the past 30 minutes. It's a long review, I know, but it's me, so what the hell do you expect? So I praise the acting, I praise the fighting scenes, I praise the ideas and the themes, I praise the humor. The music, oh yeah, the music. The music is actually pretty good in this film, but it's still not as memorable as the DC soundtracks. And this is a continuing problem with Marvel films where their soundtracks are just not there for me. In fact, the best theme related to this film is actually from the second trailer. I think it's called Gender. It's about 2 minutes 45 minutes long. You can find it on YouTube. Just type in Winter Soldier trailer music, and then you'll just find one video with Gender. You listen to it, and I think that's actually the best music in related to the film. But I don't think it's in the film itself, which is a shame because it really fits the spy underworld mood this film is going for. Um, but yeah, it's an alright soundtrack. It gets the job done, but it's still not up there with DC stuff. And really, the only problems I have with this film are kind of nitpicks and things that could have been expanded, but they weren't. This film really shouldn't have been called Winter Soldier, or at least subtitled Winter Soldier. I think it just should have been subtitled Shield because in all honesty, Winter Soldier is barely in this movie. He has maybe 15 to 20 minutes of screen time max, and the whole subplot between him and Captain America being old friends, it feels very rushed. It gets introduced in the last like 40 minutes, maybe half an hour into the movie, and then it gets immediately paid off. I really wish they had an encounter earlier on in the film, maybe during the ship segment where Captain America, starts suspecting that this guy is Bucky. And then it's kind of like a running subplot throughout the film so that when Bucky does kind of redeem himself in the end, it feels, more earned. In this film, it feels really rushed. And Bucky, as a character, isn't really given a lot to do. He's basically just there to be badass and to be a physical threat for the heroes to overcome, while Robert Redford, Alexander Pierce, is more of like the big scheming bad guy who's controlling everything like a puppet master. And he does, and to Robert Redford's credit, he does a fantastic job as well. You can tell he's really enjoying this role, and he really fits this kind of quasi-political thriller superhero flick we got going on with this film. But that being said, not much is done with Bucky as a character. This dude is probably the best Marvel villain thus far because this guy is scary as all fucking hell. Like when this guy goes to town, he goes to town. Like he just takes down an entire small army of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who are trying to help Captain America like it's nobody's business. He just fucking annihilates these guys with absolutely little difficulty. And this guy is the Terminator of superhero movies. Like, he might not have much in the way of personality or character, but when he kicks ass, and he is legitimately intelligent, scary, cunning, and just very goddamn powerful. And the way he does it is just smooth. Like it's kind of like Devil May Cry, where you know how you know those crazy exaggerated cutscenes. You know Devil May Cry when Dante just effortlessly kicks everybody's ass in the room, and he just makes it look so easy. Winter Soldier's kind of like that, where he just takes out a small fleet of ships, no problem, and the crew commandeering it. You know, he kills people, no problem. He has this kind of slick attitude to him, and I think it really helps his badass factor because we all love seeing a character just take on, a whole shitload of dudes and kick their asses and do it in a slick, stylish kind of way. And that's kind of what we get with the Winter Soldier. But still, I don't think there's enough of him in this movie to justify him being kind of credited as kind of like the co-character because he's barely in it. I really think they just could have subtitled it Shield because the film or Hydra, either of the two would have fit a lot better because those really fit in more with what the film is trying to do. But I get it, the Winter Soldier is a fan servicey title and shit, and fans were probably orgasming at when this thing was announced like a year ago back at Comic Con. So yeah, I can understand why they called it the Winter Soldier. It's there for fan service, though logically speaking, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Another thing I want to complain is that Marvel is really getting fucking lazy with their post-credit scenes. Now, the first post-credit scene that was leaked online is Baron von Strucker, talking about how they were basically experimenting on humans, and they managed to get two volunteers to work. Those two are, of course, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. We get to see a glimpse of their power, and it's a cool scene and all that. But this film really doesn't do anything in terms of building a larger universe. I mean, sure, there are other scenes, there are references, frequent references to the other Avengers, and that's fine, and a lot of them are pretty damn funny. But there's barely any Easter eggs. This film really doesn't show you how the world was affected by the Avengers at large. That was one of the big selling points of it by Kevin Feige. Like, this is the epilogue to Avengers 1, while at the same time a prologue to Avengers Age of Ultron. And it's really not that. It's just kind of a continuation of Cap's story from Avengers, but it really doesn't set up a lot of things to be done in Age of Ultron. Now, I could be wrong. When Age of Ultron comes out a year from now, they could be saying, they basically set all this stuff up in Winter Soldier, in small tidbits, and I wouldn't have even have noticed. So when I inevitably review that film a year from now, I'm just gonna look like a complete fucking idiot for missing the finer details. But the second post-credit scene is just Bucky going into a museum dedicated to Captain America at the Smithsonian, and he just looks at his picture, and that's the end of the scene. I mean, it's nowhere near as bad as the Iron Man 3 scene where abso-fucking-lutely nothing was done in terms of world building. It's just another scene where we get more stupid gags after an hour and a half of more stupid gags. And like I said, it's not as bad as the Iron Man 3 one, but it's pointless. I mean, yeah, we get it. Bucky's going to go look out for his identity, but we don't need a scene to tell us that. I think him remembering who Steve was and saving him from death kind of shows you and that this dude is going to seek out who he really is. So that pointless little scene after an especially long credits bit just felt disappointing. And in fact, I wish we could have seen a scene where Von Strucker goes into his office or he goes into another chamber and he's overseeing the construction of a robot, and then he picks up Ultron's helmet, he examines it, and then we get a line or two of dialogue from David Spader as Ultron. That would have been sick. I would have grabbed the dude sitting next to me by the collar of his shirt and said, "Ultron!" in excitement. But sadly, none of that was done, and I really get the feeling that these guys are getting pretty fucking lazy with their post-credit scenes. But other than those couple of things, I really have nothing bad to say about this film. It is shot wonderfully. It's the full package. It has drama, tension, fantastic action, just hysterical, laugh your ass off humor, witty banter, great acting, and it's probably the most complete Marvel Studios movie yet. And I wouldn't call this the Dark Knight of every Marvel movie. I still say X2 is the Dark Knight of Marvel movies. But this one is easily my favorite solo Marvel flick. This completely obliterates all others in every possible way, and it's probably right now in my top 5 favorite comic book films of all time. So yeah, guys, I know this was a particularly long review, but there's a lot that had to be said about this film, and I really think you gotta go see this premiere. I saw it at my own country's premiere yesterday, and I just fucking hell was it a great time. I am so pleased. This almost makes up for the atrocity that was Iron Man 3 and the mediocrity of Thor 2. But whether or not Age of Ultron can seal the deal remains to be seen. I'm not going to watch Guardians of the Galaxy because fuck that movie. I have plenty of explanations as to why I don't think that movie is going to be any good on my own channel on YouTube, you know. So, and I really don't feel like going in depth with that here. So yeah, it is disappointing. I'm going to have to wait another year to see how how Phase 2 is going to play out. But when the time comes for that, it'll come to that. So yeah, thank you guys for watching this video. I'm your host, Ivan Kroll, aka the Game Raging Psycho. And just before I leave, I want to tell you, if you need a site where all your nerd needs can be fulfilled, please check out nerdsociety.com in the comments below. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you on the next video review. See ya.